good.
All right, roll please.
Rolling.
All right. What's your name and what do you do?
My name is Adolfo Mejia. I'm a stagehand with Local 16. I generally work as a rigger, carpenter, sometimes on the rare occasion as an electrician, done a grip call, lighting call here and there, and I've worked in shops quite a bit.
How long have you been a stagehand?
About 6.5 years now, I believe.
I've been a stagehand.
I've been a stagehand for approximately 6.5 years.
One more time.
I've been a stagehand for approximately 6.5 years.
What do your daily job duties include?
Depending on the job, sometimes I'm pushing cases, unloading trucks. Other times it could be laying out floors for rigging to hang motors and whatnot. Other times standing flats, and occasionally doing paperwork.
Do you have a favorite show you've ever worked on?
I can't say I've had a favorite show. I think my only real nerd out moment was when Rancid played at Band Together a few years back for the fire benefit, raising money for the fire victims. And I gave a fist bump to Armstrong just because that was like my one band that I'm actually cool, I got to see them type of situation.
Have you had any injuries directly related to your work?
I've had minor injuries, nicks and bruises. I did drop a base plate for some pipe and drape on my foot one time because I was smart enough to wear sneakers, and that hurt. I then got into a boom lift and operated that because I thought it would be easier than running around on the floor. That proved to be not the case, and as soon as I got out of the boom lift after a couple hours, I near collapsed from the pain because it was just so intense, the throbbing. But other than that, no, I've been fortunate. I haven't had any serious injuries as of yet.
I have a question. Why is the boom lift causing throbbing?
Because I'm standing on the boom. When in a boom lift, you're just standing the entire time. Sometimes you have to shift weight a lot. It's a constant balancing act, especially when you're higher up. It's like being in a crow's nest on a ship, and you're just doing this more often than you want. So that's the reason for.
I did a 175-footer in Portland because none of their local guys would do it. And the hall called me and said, "You want to go up to Portland for a TV show for a couple of days? They need a condor guy." And so I know what you're saying. What's your favorite thing about being a stagehand?
Favorite thing about being a stagehand is the flexibility of the schedule. I really work as much as I want to, in all honesty, and that's got its pluses and minuses because when I get on a big job, if I know I have a big job, then I'm committed to that, and sometimes it can be days and hours without any sort of predictability. But thankfully, once that runs over, I don't have to work again immediately if I don't want to.
How does your spouse feel about your work?
It's been tough. I mean, she's been with me since the beginning. We were dating when I first started, and she kind of took the reins, and it was a bit of a leap of faith financially in the first year and a half. But the finances aside, I think the hardest part is again, the scheduling, not knowing when I'll have time off. And oftentimes, especially after a long run, I'm so worn out that it's like, I don't want to do anything for at least a day. And it becomes valuable to try to give as much time as I can to her and our relationship. But being worn out as I am, it's trying on both of us.
Do you feel adequately compensated for the work you do?
For the most part, there are certain conditions that I feel we should receive better benefits, whether it's the rate or the hourly versus half hourly rate, like what we're getting paid. A lot of times, especially as a rigger, I mean, it's a grueling job. It's probably one of the filthiest jobs, aside from maybe working in a shop. And some of the conditions we have to work in, whether it's crawling in one of the attic spaces of the theaters or being just up in the grid, it's nasty work. And sometimes I don't think we get the credit as riggers, especially because of the risky situations that we get into. But then, yeah, there are more than enough jobs where I feel like I am fully compensated. So overall, I wouldn't complain, but there are certainly specific cases where it's like, that wasn't really to our benefit.
Got it.
Are you a risk taker?
I wouldn't say I'm not. I mean, I ride a motorcycle. I do enjoy climbing.
Just the MI taker.
Am I a risk taker? I am probably more of a risk taker than I should be at times. Not just in the work I do, but also in the day-to-day. Motorcycles, I like climbing. That's one of the things I enjoy about the job. Talking about the boom lift, like, yeah, I will go up in a 185 if I'm asked to. So yeah, I guess I am a risk taker.
Okay, all right. Let's talk about the changing state of diversity with Local 16. How do you feel about it, and do you feel it's affected you personally?
It's hard to say because I'm relatively new to the local. I mean, some would say I'm still a baby. But being a person of color, I, at times, hear certain things that I know are not intended to come off as racist, and I don't think that's even the right term. But sometimes I'm, for example, a California native, and I mean, like, on my mom's side, I'm Native American, and the border crossed us. And it's always like, where are you from? California. Where are you from? California. Yeah, but where are you really from? And those kinds of questions, I think people aren't in sync with really what they're getting across, like what they're saying. And I don't want to ever accuse these people of being racist. But there is a level of, I guess, callousness to some of the language that we use. At the same time, I work with a pretty diverse group of guys and gals. And so from my perspective, the time I've been, I think it's a good pool of people, personalities, backgrounds. So I think the diversity at the moment is strong, but we still have a lot to grow.
Okay. Okay, thank you. When you're asked what you do for work by people not in the industry, what do you tell them, and do you think they actually understand?
When people ask me what I do for work, I first and foremost say I'm a stagehand. And I get the general, like, what's a stagehand? And so then I begin with the simple process of, have you ever seen a movie? You ever seen a TV show? Ever been to a concert, a conference? Well, we built all that. Everything that's hanging above you, everything that's in front of you, like, that's what we do. We install it all. But even then, I don't think people really understand what exactly we do. I was recently talking to an uncle who taught me a lot of skills. I mean, I grew up working with my hands. And I was kind of explaining to him what we do and telling him, like, you know, we have to calculate weights and blah, blah, blah. He's like, wow, it's really involved what you guys are doing. And he's a math major. He was a math teacher, really smart guy. And so for him, I think he kind of understood. It's not as simple as building IKEA furniture. But in some ways, I mean, that's kind of what we do on a grander scale. You know, someone built this ahead of time, and we come in and put it together and make it happen.
Cool.
You still have extra parts left over?
Sometimes it's the people.
Have you ever experienced or seen sexual harassment in the job site?
Have I ever experienced or seen sexual harassment? I have. And I have been in a position where it's been a small group of individuals, and a joke starts, and it's one of those situations where I've been like, we shouldn't be talking about this. We shouldn't be making those jokes. Nah, we're not in a space for that right now, guys. There's also been a lot of controversy of late in the local because of certain cases that have arisen. And I think something that's been hard for people to understand is that it's the harassment that has been brought forward, the charges that have been brought forward haven't been simply because someone said something. It's been because an action was taken and there was a physical aggression. And I've never been in that situation, thankfully, where I've had to either witness it or step in or ever be accused of it. I always try to respect boundaries as well as I can. But unfortunately, there's a mentality that we still have to work on as men, especially.
Have you experienced or seen drug or alcohol abuse on the job?
I have experienced and seen drug and or alcohol on the job. Never myself. That's just something what we do is risky enough. And so in my mind, I just don't want to put myself in that situation. That's not to say that I've never been on a show call, stepped out to lunch, and hey, it's fine. We're not doing anything risky today. We're sitting around. But when there's an actual job to be done, I won't partake. And that's just my personal thing.
When you say your job is risky enough, could you restate that? Because you hit your microphone.
I don't remember exactly what I said, but our job is risky enough. I don't need to add factors of risk.
Okay. Do you feel safe at work?
I feel safe at work in and what we do because it's what we do is inherently not safe to begin with, and it's a matter of reducing the risk, minimizing the risk. I think that's an understanding that we all enter, whether it's the way things are connected for power or hanging stuff overhead, standing up scenery pieces. In general, I think we practice safe behavior. It doesn't mean that there aren't individuals that at times I'd rather stay away from.
If you weren't a stagehand, what do you think you'd like to do for a living?
If I wasn't a stagehand, I would be a writer, or at least teaching somewhere, teaching creative writing, hopefully. Mm-hmm. I have a master's in creative writing, so that's kind of where I started.
What's the longest call you've ever worked?
The longest single day was 29 hours, and that was the Eagles Def Leppard concert. It was 2 shows back to back. We started at 6 a.m. and I didn't get out of there until sometime the next day.
Okay. That's all I have. Do you have anything else?
Yeah. What about pranks and jokes? Do you like to play pranks at work?
I'm not going to say I don't, but I can't think of anything specific. I think the favorite one I've known of is one of our brothers was up in the grid at the Bill Graham Civic Auditorium, which is approximately 7 feet, depending on where he was standing. And they'd been putting tape on each other's backs all day, and he lowered in a rope with a piece of gaff tape on it and snagged the guy. And as the guy looked over, he pulls the rope up. So he never realized, the guy on the ground never realized that he'd gotten taped.
That is good. All right.
Why is humor so important on the job?
It's what makes it bearable.
We say that in a sentence.
What makes humor so important on a job is that it makes the job bearable. If we couldn't joke, I worked in special ed for the longest time, and the one thing that we all understood was that if we couldn't laugh about what we were doing, there's no way we could go home and not hate life. And I think there's a similarity.
Excellent. Very good.